we have a number of examples of where social robots have been introduced into health and care settings. The first one, we're going to look at our own work. Perry and I did some research, was published in the last year or so, about the introduction of Paro, and we've already met Paro, into a setting, a daycare setting in Ireland, involving people with dementia.
And the second set of case studies is coming from this book by the English anthropologist James Wright, Robots Won't Save Japan. And that's a very interesting study of the use of social robots in the country that has been the leader globally in this field. And some of his findings are quite interesting. So we'll be drawing on a number of examples from that book.
Thank you for that, Perry. And as you can see, we'll also be looking at the robot Hug in Japan. And we're going to be looking at a very interesting social robot that we met for the first time last year in Denmark, Inmu. But that's probably not the correct pronunciation, Perry, is it?
I'm not sure. My Danish pronunciation of robot names isn't great, but yeah. So Inmu is a robot cushion, I think would be the fairest description of it, and we'll be contrasting how that has been used within the workplace, maybe with some of the examples from Japan and from Ireland.
Yeah. So let's have a little think again about the use of a social robot. Perry, why would we go about introducing a social robot?
I suppose the first thing is that a lot of the work that's been done on social robots, as has already become apparent in this MOOC, is in the laboratory setting where engineers, roboticists and others have tried to solve the challenges of getting machines to act like human beings or other animals. It's one thing to do this in the lab where the environment is very controlled. It's another thing altogether when you take the robots out of that protected environment and put them in the workplace. So that's why it's interesting to look at some of these examples.
Mm-hmm. And you put together some very interesting bullet points here as well. And throughout the next hour or so, we'll explore and unpack a lot of these issues. So, what makes it attractive to work and use a robot in a setting? What are the barriers that a lot of researchers have encountered to professional carers actually applying the technology? And a big question, Perry, is this idea of participatory design.
Yeah, and I think we'll see that evolve through this discussion. On the one hand, what James Wright points out in his book, and we'll come back to this, but is that there's a sharp divide in Japan between the people who develop the robots in robot research centres and the people in care settings who are expected to use the robots. And then when we think to the end, to the Inmu robot in Denmark, a very different approach in terms of involving the end users of robots in the actual design of those robots, which we would argue is a more effective way to do it. But that's jumping ahead to much later in the story, but that's the sort of general direction that we'll be going in.